Thank you very much. I'm very appreciative of this opportunity. So thank you, Ms. Niehaus, and to the team at NSTF. It's interesting because the program that I'm going to talk about today, ABIPP for short, the Agricultural Bioeconomy Innovation Partnership Program, recently undertook its first 5-year review. So it's just over 5 years. That means it's potty trained. But in exciting terms, it's done some amazing work in its short period of time. So perhaps allow me to share some of those successes with you. And that's what today's conversation is about. It's also about underpinning the role of agriculture, not just in South Africa, but on the African continent. It's one of the biggest contributors to the gross domestic product, and it has the highest share of total employment. And you can see via this map the incredible opportunities it provides in sustaining households across the continent itself. The question then is, given its significant impact on the continent, can we see Africa feeding the world? Well, interestingly enough, I thought this is an appropriate space to share this, that 50% of the world's remaining uncultivated land resides in Africa. And this is a huge potential for us in terms of food security. Also, 65% of our labor force on the continent itself actually comes from the agricultural sector, and smallholder farms, in essence, provide up to 80% of food production in sub-Saharan Africa. So we're highly dependent on this sector. So where to from here? We strongly believe that accelerating efforts to place agriculture as a key driver to GDP growth is critically important. And we need to find innovative ways for us to upscale some of the capabilities and technologies and bring private sector on board without us having undue claims of what we're calling land grabs at the moment. So it's about equitable access to land and respectful behaviors that allows for us to grow this sector, considering the impact of the people. So interestingly enough, Africa's agri-food tech startups, as you can see from this map, contribute quite significantly. In 2021, as an example, there were 150 agri-food tech startup deals that were actually closed across 120 initiatives. We have big 4 countries, that's Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt, and South Africa. You saw that in the previous slide. And with the graph on the bottom left, it actually disaggregates the various sectors that have a key role to play in the agricultural sector itself and how it relates to supporting the agricultural capabilities. So it looks at home food, cooking, agri-food, fintech. It looks at bioenergy, innovative foods. But what emerges is that mid-term technologies, that is taking food from the farm to the fork, that is from the farmer to the consumer, raises the highest amount of venture capital funding on the continent. So that's quite impressive. And we find that this is an area for us that we now see as an opportunity for capitalizing on in revitalizing the agricultural sector. So what are the challenges that we face, given that we've painted this beautiful picture of where we sit with agriculture on the continent? It's very simple. We import most of our food products, and it's largely from EU countries, France, Spain, Netherlands, Ukraine's also part of that mix, and of course, US states. And we're largely importing processed foods. So cereals, processed dairy products, seal preparations, vegetable oils, as an example. And what we found is that about 18 African countries have put in food import bans across 3 areas: livestock, poultry, and beverages. And the thing is, we're not quite clear around how effective these are to date. What we're finding, and largely this is the narrative that emerges is that poverty remains high on the continent. Intracontinental trade around agriculture is low, and government subsidies are minimal, if any, on the continent. And the countries from which we are importing have the agricultural sector highly subsidized by national governments. The other challenge I said, and we did celebrate this earlier, around accessing to agri-food tech venture capital. And as much as we celebrate the amount of revenue that comes in this form, we must also contextualize this with the global context. And the venture capital funding we are receiving actually amounts to less than 1% of what is accessible globally. And this does remain a challenge because we can tap into modernizing this sector with far more capital than we're actually tapping into it as well. The other challenges that we face largely links to socio-technical systems, understanding social needs, and marrying that with technological advancements for sustainable farming practices. And this, for the agricultural sector, is largely underpinned on energy, food systems, and mobility systems or logistics systems. And we need to bring on board regulators, industry, infrastructure, from universities, from science councils, and also underpin it on our uniquely African context, which we often omit when we are trying to compete with the global north. The other issue relates to the fourth industrial revolution and its implications, especially on the agricultural sector, because modernizing the sector also, proposes the threat of job security. And whilst we can automate a number of those activities, we also need to start looking at how do we reskill or upskill some of farm laborers so that we are more adaptive to the opportunities that are presented with the Internet of Things. So we are then looking at how we as a department are responding to modernizing this critical sector in our country. So what I'd like to start by saying is that in 2019, the department launched the white paper on science, technology, and innovation. And just over a year ago, we launched the decadal plan, which is the implementation plan to the white paper. And it's all about deepening knowledge, the knowledge economy for enhanced socioeconomic impact. So how can science deliver on innovative solutions that addresses our taxpayer? If you unpack the decadal plan further, there are a number of grand challenges that are articulated, from climate change, future-proofing, education and skills, reindustrializing the modern economy, and the future of society. We also articulate in there new areas of growth, largely linked to the circular economy and the digital economy. And we also define STI priorities around energy innovation, health innovation, and modernization of key sectors of the economy. And this is where agriculture and mining features quite strongly. Now, the decadal plan and white paper and technology also strongly links to the Sustainable Development Goals, the Agenda 2063 for Africa, and of course, our National Development Plan, which is actually the godmother for the white paper and the decadal plan. Feeding from there is the bioeconomy strategy, and a lot of the work undertaken by the department anchors itself on the agricultural and agro-processing master plan. And these all tie up to the new growth part framework, as well as the economic reconstruction and recovery master plan, all about making sure that we put out a more competitive and robust market for food security, inclusive growth, job creation, and export capabilities. So why the interest on agriculture in South Africa? Well, we've already spoken on the African continent. Let me perhaps share with you the role agriculture plays in South Africa in terms of both GDP and employment, agriculture and agro-processing as a collective comprise around 7%, which is quite significant. We also say that when we look at the type of goods that drive South Africa's agricultural sector, we find that it's in excess of 300 billion rand. When we zoom in and say, what exactly is it that we are driving sales with or exporting, it largely links to red meat, largely cows or beef, soybean, chicken or poultry farming, fruit, maize, vegetables, milk, and sugarcane. And of course, sugarcane is an industry in distress. And this team that works on this on a daily basis is also looking at revitalizing the sugar industry, given the rising concerns and challenges around sugar as a food group in terms of our diet and the implications to health therein. So what are the implications in terms of South Africa and access to food security that drives some of our work? Well, pre-COVID versus post-COVID, from this very high level national map, you can see that in 2019, yes, the Northern Cape did have challenges with food security and food access, and we had a relatively green map in terms of food security. So everyone seemed to have access and availability to food. But post-COVID, you see a lot more oranges. And over the last year, we have seen provinces actually be declared a space of food security crisis. And this is a big concern for us in national government. And the challenge in terms of that, and this is a presentation slide that we've got from the ShopRite group, it largely links to the decreasing yield in crops, largely because of climate change and the availability of food. The second links to access to food, and this is higher in rural areas than in cities. And there's child-headed households as well as women-headed households, and these are the vulnerable groups that are having challenges with access to food as well. So the third issue is around food variety, and we all know about the food pyramid. And because of the rising cost of food, and we all know this, I'm sure there's been almost a 50 to 75% increase in the cost of food since COVID. And we find that people are buying more of the staple carbohydrate-rich foods and none of the proteins or other food groups. And this is a concern because this leads to stunted growth in other areas that impact on human malnutrition. And of course, stability in terms of food security challenges, economic hardships that have now risen, the inflation rates, and these have all become huge problems for the country, especially around since the pandemic itself. So in response to this context that I've just paved and shared with you, we've had ABIPP, the Agricultural Bioeconomy Innovation Partnership Program, reach its 7-year milestone recently. And this project focuses largely on 4 key dimensions around agricultural modernization. It's around business innovations, it's about digital-based innovations, human capital development, and sustainability initiatives for growth and equitable access to some of the key provisions that we are putting forward. The high-level outcomes, as we said, links largely to food security, sustainable jobs, transformed skills, healthy population, a diverse diet plan, sustainable industries, technology competitiveness, increasing our exports and the quality of our exports, growing our GDP, and reducing our carbon footprint. So there are a number of funding instruments that are in place, a skills development plan that doesn't just look at master's and doctoral programs, but also on technicians, artisans, and engineers in the agro-processing industry. We're also pushing for prototypes and demonstration and commercialization of some of our novel products. Now, ABIPP as an initiative can't do this alone. So it has leveraged partnerships and through a number of stakeholders, from Grain SA through to Winter Cereal Trust, to the Oil and Protein Seeds Trust, a number of local and international partners, private sector, collaborators, funders globally, FCDO. I don't know if Manish would want to share some of the key developments there, and across various government departments, because we can't do this alone with our small budget in the department. And of course, we need our knowledge institutions, the higher education institutions, the science councils to all be part of feeding a robust and capable and viable industry for agriculture. There is a theory of change that has been proposed, largely linked to research and development, market preparedness, capacity development, collaboration, partnerships, all of which looks at improved social outcomes for communities and sustainable rural and economic growth and development. When we unpack this further, the theory of change actually addresses a number of key challenges, from pest and disease management, climate change, energy efficiency, biosecurity, land reform, and the need for increased yield. So there's a number of interventions on the upstream end that's focusing on animal and crop improvement, biotechnology solutions, small-scale farmer support, and all driving towards making sure through coordination and facilitation we can boost the economy. So what is the vision for ABIPP? And of course, what is now what we're calling the Agricultural Science, Technology and Innovation Roadmap. So how do we bring, based on what has been achieved with ABIPP, now bring this to the national discourse and national table to say, can we all collectively support a vibrant and sustainable agricultural sector that advances productivity, competitiveness, food security, and economic development, especially in marginalized communities. And this can only be achieved through partnerships, coordination, agility and increased efficiencies, supporting new areas of growth. And this also looks at supporting some of our indigenous crops to South Africa, sorghum as an example being one of them, driving resilience and sustainability, and of course, transformation and inclusivity. Now, ABIPP has a number of flagship initiatives, from with the wheat breeding program all the way to the aquaculture initiative. And through these 6 flagship projects, over 9,000 community members have been trained, largely in Eastern Cape, KZN, and in Mpumalanga. There have been over 25,000 beneficiaries, from especially women and youth. Over 600 small-scale farmers have been supported. Over 3,000 farmers have actually benefited from the technologies and innovations that have spurred out of this initiative. ABIPP also is a very small budget, so I'd like to take this as a public platform to congratulate the team in leveraging over 400 million rands to support some of these key activities. Of course, there's been a number of people that have been trained, jobs created, and human capital development supported throughout this space. Where we are now is celebrating some of the successes, and these include what we are calling the National Biosecurity Hub. And this hub is about supporting the prevention, reduction, and management of crop and animal diseases around food safety in South Africa. And it's launched at Innovation Africa and funded through the previous administration, which was Dalrad and TIA. And the whole objective herein is about surveillance and early warning around pests, crop disease, and making sure that we have these early warning systems in place so that we can minimize challenges such as foot and mouth disease on the one hand, or the other side. I'll share with you a case of what is it? Some army worm that attacked us a few years ago. So this project has a number of key areas, from surveillance of disease and pest management, early warning systems, and information hub. It offers knowledge services and products and links itself largely to human capital development and private-public partnerships. So there was a fall worm outbreak a few years ago, and in this slide you could see exactly through the app where the biggest infestations were, and this capability allows for us to capture, store, and visualize data all the way down to the provincial level. Another exciting project is that of smart agriculture using geospace solutions. So it's a combination of agro, geoinformatics, and precision farm management. And it's actually about harnessing the power of satellite imagery and big data analytics. So in our program itself, in Program 2, we also support the South African National Space Agency, and the satellites provide us with Earth observation data that allows for us to analyze a number of key areas. So the Precision Agriculture Information System is led by CSR, and they are also using digital technologies and platforms to provide agricultural extension services. And this allows farmers through an app to be able to communicate with one another, know what the crop quality is, know what interventions need to be put in place, and of course, reduce time to react and respond to some of the key environmental challenges. So Earth observation data is all about increasing yield, revenue, reducing labor costs and input costs, especially around data management for sustainable agricultural practices, and positioning South Africa. And I have deep passion for this project. It's all about positioning South Africa as a global leader in combating global food security. So some of the flagships projects I spoke of and shared with you earlier is the wheat breeding platform. Now, wheat farming in South Africa has decreased over the years, despite the fact that South Africa produces some of the best quality wheat products, and we need to start looking at how we upscale production and reduce our reliance on import products herein. In 2017, a wheat breeding platform was established at University of Stellenbosch, and it has brought on board a number of key partners, from Grain SA to Technology Innovation Agency, Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, Department of Agriculture. And it's all about improving resistance to extreme temperatures and, of course, stress environments, including drought. The other catalytic project links to agro-processing industry, especially around niche crops in South Africa: canola, sorghum, cassava, rice, sweet potato, and potato as an example. And as you can see across this value chain, we have done some projects with marula, honeybush, aloe, and cotton. And we've seen SMMEs being supported through this initiative. We've seen farmers, especially emerging farmers, benefit significantly. We've had technology demonstrations. And of course, we are looking at tech transfer and knowledge exchange, especially training farmers on how to utilize the new technologies available to them. Underpinning all of the projects and all of the work under ABIPP is farmer development support. That is how we measure success. And it's from this slide, you can see the number of emerging Black farmers that have been supported, the number of jobs we've created, the investments we've put on the table, some of our key partners, as well as the various crops that has been supported through what we're calling the district development model, where we take our innovations and make sure that municipalities and districts benefit from the technologies that have been invested by national government. Another exciting project around SMME development is Tokobio, and they're about using the technologies to basically point of care detection, so basically finding out where animal disease detection and management can be diagnosed, all the way through analyzing it and finding a way in which we can respond to resolving some of the challenges that farmers face. A few more slides on the successes, links to the One Food program. And this is largely funded in partnership with the United Kingdom. And it's about identifying and controlling hazards in food systems as a tangible means to operationalize what we call One Health. And in this space, we're optimizing the health, not just of humans, but of animals, plants, and ecosystems with equal importance. Because if there is an outbreak in poultry farms and we consume those chickens, we have a problem. Remember listeriosis. So this is why equal importance has to be given to everyone across the value chain, because we do not want disease progression migrating from food into humans or animals. So this is an interdisciplinary food systems approach, and it involves sustainably balancing the health of the environment with the health of people and, of course, the food sources in this regard. Eucalyptus genome project. Now, we all know eucalyptus to be an essential oil we use whenever we have a cold or our children have colds. But eucalyptus is a critical component of the agri-sector industry, because it's also a source for timber, for biofuels, energy, for pulp and paper, and for biorefineries. So sequencing of eucalyptus genomes benefits not just researchers, but also the sector itself. And it's about creating a model breeding program that not only upskills and skills our researchers, but it's also about making sure we have marker-assisted breeding to increase yield, and due to them now having improved disease resistance and, of course, getting biomass quality improved. And we've had a number of patents being registered through university industry partnerships, and we're making sure that these are co-designed, co-owned, so that no one is left behind. And this is what we're trying to push in this space. The other success, and probably the last success I'll share with you right now, is aquaculture. And this is about utilizing various systems for farming, depending on the species we're looking at. And it's about looking and developing diagnostic kits for pathogens. We're looking at mini hydropowered energy recovery systems for aquaculture plants, nanobubble technology, spirulina, and obviously making sure that we do have appropriate and high quality aquatic animal feed. And if any one of you is in the store and you see the Karoo Catch cans in the stores, please know that's a proudly South African product. I do support it, and know it was funded by the department and the Department of Innovation. So with all these successes, and there are many more, I've only highlighted a few, what is the future of ABIPP and the work that has been undertaken by this small and remarkable team is that we need to start benchmarking. How do we fare to some of the individuals that the other countries that are global producers of food, and how do we now start measuring our economic performance? The next one is looking at best practices that can be utilized around public engagement, collaboration, a policy framework, value adding, capacity building, and sustainability. So these are areas that have emerged from the ABIPP review, a 5-year review that happened recently, and we are now trying to measure exactly how do we proceed taking this, because it's a continuous learning journey. And as we move and map towards the next 5 years into the 10-year lifespan, we need to make sure ABIPP is appropriately positioned. So the take-home message from my side largely links to a few key areas. One is about building the human capital development pipeline from farm to fork, from the analysis in the laboratory all the way to improving crops and helping farmers in the end. And that looks at us building the next generation, early career, mid-career, and established researcher cohort. We also cannot forget and leave out the post-school education and training sector, because we are highly dependent on FET colleges. We're highly dependent on TVET colleges and the CETA sector for building and giving us the skills needed for packaging and sanitation of products for the export market, for transport, the cold chain logistics, processing, skilling our farm laborers, the agribusiness model on how do we position the business, from sales and marketing to communication about what we're doing, and environmental conservation is just some key areas. But also important is about helping our emerging farmers with the correct entrepreneurial skills so that we can take agriculture to the next level and create more jobs and sustainable practices around agriculture. So some of the key success factors I think are critically important is having the right knowledge, skills, attitude, and ability mix. And this is about making sure we have the right researchers on the table, artisans, technicians, and engineers that are trained and supported. We're also looking at procurement, technical manufacturing, sustainable supply chain, and procurement policies. The next links to learning environment and having an appropriate space or platform for emerging Black farmer support, capacity building, skills transfer, access to information and expertise, and having, of course, on-the-job training. Finally, and most importantly on this slide, is agri-ethics. A lot of the agricultural work is underpinned in biotech and genetic modification. So we must ensure scientific validity is in place, that we have social justice imperatives underpinning our ethical access to land, especially indigenous land, that there is animal welfare taken care of, and agroecology is safeguarded in terms of pushing through not just food security and access, but safe agricultural products that are put on the table. So in terms of my final slide and my last message to you today is that in order to enhance compliance of regulations leading to the creation of safer agri-food value chains across the continent, reduced foodborne disease burden in Africa, and improved competitiveness of Africa's food commodities, these are critical that we have key underpinning values that drive how we look at food security for Africa. And the first is about a whole of government approach, harmonizing our policies, strengthening our coordination, and building incentives for the agricultural sector, developing, training, skilling, reskilling, and upskilling some of our human capital, especially around digital agricultural tools, and making sure that we leave no one behind. So women, youth, and people with disabilities must be prioritized in this strategy for human capital development. We also need to strengthen the enabling environment, from surveillance monitoring to reporting, regulatory capabilities across value chains, from tech transfer and mutually beneficial partnerships. We can't be in a space where Africa is always about, and South Africa is always about receiving handouts and leftovers. We also need to put on the table what is in it for us. The fourth is about investing in the appropriate large scale and feeder research infrastructure platforms. As an example, high resolution technology is not cheap. It does not come cheap. And we need to make sure we do have that kind of capability in place, especially around sequences. And then we need a whole of society approach. We need an engaged national system of innovation. We need private-public partnerships, agri-SETAs to ensure that our food security is at the top of our mandate. And in order to deliver on that, outreach and communication across various audiences in the public sector, from teachers to school learners to grannies in rural areas. This is critically important. And with that, I'd like to say thank you and also congratulate the team led by Maneshri and, of course, there's Tabang and Beulah for their exceptional work in supporting and pushing the mandate for ABIPP, not just on the radar of the department, but also in national government. Thank you very much, Chair.